Welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Donovan Brady. I'm the team lead for the Solutions Architects here at LogicWorks, and we will be talking about how to survive the Windows 2008 end of support. So, Windows Server and SQL Server 2008 support are expiring. Windows Server is going to be expiring in 2019, and SQL Server will be expiring in 2020. So, what does that mean to you? Well, first and foremost, it means there are no new upgrades or no new security updates. This is imperative for compliant builds. Let's say, for example, there's a virus or something that would leave your server susceptible to malicious activity. Your SQL 2008 deployment or Windows 2008 deployment won't actually be able to receive the patch that would be able to remediate the issue. This is really critical because since compliance has such defined patching schedules, they obviously need to be up to date and secure. Additionally, there are extremely high rates for additional support if you stay on-prem. When you're in support, there's a 30% support fee, but when you're out of support, it jumps up all the way to 70%. So that leaves us with a few different options. First, you could rehost on AWS using Amazon EC2 instances. So there are a few different benefits, but there are also multiple different licensing options for you. You could pay as you go, license included, or you could bring your SQL Server licenses with active software assurance to Amazon EC2. Software assurance is actually provided through Microsoft, and if you have it, that's great. If you don't, not a problem. You can still bring your license over, but you would need to have dedicated infrastructure. The one snag with dedicated infrastructure is that there's an associated $1,500 fee for the deployment of a dedicated infrastructure. And of course, you can upgrade to a supported version once migrated. The benefits associated would be you're familiar with your experience, you have full control over the environment, and you have all SQL Server features available. That would include things like SSIS integrations, SSRS integrations, store procedures. Pretty much anything that you would be doing on your on-prem you can do with your EC2 instance. And finally, you would lower your TCO for SQL workloads. Generally speaking, moving to AWS is going to be cheaper than if you're deploying in your on-prem, and that breaks down into two different types of costs. You have your upfront costs, which would be basically buying your hardware for your on-prem deployment, and then you have your variable costs. The variable costs would include monitoring or maintenance or any sort of license spend. Now, Amazon makes it really easy for you to monitor and manage your environment with various tools like CloudWatch or Config or CloudTrail for monitoring and managing. You're only going to be paying for what you use, and the other benefit that Amazon has is that there are a ton of tools to help track and monitor your costs, so any variable costs that you do have can be easily calculated and predicted. The second option is to rehost on Amazon RDS. Now, I love Amazon RDS because it has a whole suite of automation tools available to you. Whereas in EC2, you have to manage all of the scaling, high availability, backups, and patching by yourself. Amazon RDS takes care of that for you. It provides something called push-button scaling, where there's no need to terminate your instance and rebuild the instance when you need to scale up. You can just select the size you want to scale to, and it takes care of it for you. You can enjoy high availability through a multi-AZ deployment, and you don't have to worry about configuring failover clusters or always-on availability groups. Amazon takes care of that for you as well. Also, most recently, Amazon just released support for always-on availability groups for RDS, which previously wasn't possible. However, there is a drawback with this as well, and that is that a second AZ deployment would mean a second license and obviously its associated costs. Finally, it takes care of the backups and patching for you, so you don't have to worry about maintaining a patching schedule or a backup schedule. It automatically takes daily snapshots for you and stores them in your S3 buckets, and also replicates them. Wherever possible, we like to use RDS because of all of the various automation that it provides. However, there are also a few other drawbacks to using RDS. Firstly, you're not exposed to the operating system or any operating system access. That means any heavy-duty or legacy deployments would be a little more difficult to use RDS for. You can, if you have a lot of SQL Server agent jobs, you can utilize step functions for that, but if you're using, as we mentioned before, SSIS, SSRS, certain store procedures or linked servers, those wouldn't be possible with RDS, and you would have to switch to EC2. The third option is Go full on with the cloud, refactor with cloud-native services, and go to Amazon Aurora. Amazon Aurora would mean migrating to Postgres or a MySQL engine instead of staying on your SQL server. The benefits to this would be that it's open source and it's flexible, so any updates that are deployed or released to the softwares you get automatically, and the licensing fees are way cheaper. It's also way more flexible, so any backups that you used to have that would take 5 to 6 hours now pretty much happen in about 5 minutes. And they could take around an hour to restore, where I'm sure you know that SQL Server deployments take way longer than that to restore. It also has an incredibly in-depth multi-AZ and highly available deployment structure. So if you are deploying, you actually have 6 copies of your database across 3 different availability zones, and then you can have up to 15 different read replicas for various performance increases. Another cool story that I like is when one of our customers was looking to do a full data center migration to AWS, they had such a heavy-duty SQL implementation, leveraging a lot of SSIS and store procedures that would be really hard to replicate. So we actually decided not to replicate them, and we migrated them to Aurora. They decided that the upfront work that was required was well worth the performance and the flexibility updates and upgrades that the open source engines provide. And finally, the last option would be to migrate to Microsoft Azure. Azure has a great managed database solution, experiencing 99.99% redundancy and high availability built in without the need for multiple licenses. You could do this using like a lift and shift approach, using Azure Hybrid Use Benefit, which they're actually incentivizing right now, 3 years of additional support until 2022. The other nice thing about Azure is that you can have SSIS integrations even with a managed instance deployment through Azure's Data Factory. So Azure has put together a lot of different automation tools and different services that would actually support your SQL Server deployment. To summarize, you have 4 options available to you. 1, you can rehost on Amazon EC2, where you have full control over your environment and you have all SQL Server features available to you. 2, you could replatform to Amazon RDS, when utilizing the managed service takes care of all infrastructure management and there's a rapid time to deployment. And 3, refactoring to Amazon Aurora, which would effectively modernize your application and significantly reduce your TCO because you don't have to worry about licensing costs for SQL Server. Also, you could migrate to Microsoft Azure. That's incentivizing an additional 3 years of support after the deadline right now to 2022. And you can have a lift and shift approach and still experience all the high availability and automation tools that you would otherwise experience. So, how can LogicWorks help? Well, if you want engineers to review your current SQL Server deployments and help you decide what to do next, please contact us. We offer cloud strategy and consulting services and have helped hundreds of companies migrate to the cloud. And as a premier AWS partner and Azure Expert MSP partner, we can get special funding from AWS and Azure for migrations. We also specialize in complex workloads for companies in highly regulated industries like healthcare and financial services. If you're already on AWS or Azure and want help maintaining your cloud, we also offer 24/7 support and managed services, which include database services. Thank you so much for listening to the webinar, and have a great day.